Ready?
1 second.
Is it recording?
It's recording. Here we are again. Second
Back once
time we
again.
are back together, face to face. Good to see you again, Jim. So, today we're going to talk about, very simple, how is tennis going to look like in the year 2070, which is 50 years from now.
50 years?
And can you tell us, Jim, why we chose 50 years?
Well, 50 years from now, it's incredible. You'll be 90, I'll be about 57. So it's a long time away. But I think it's got a nice symmetry to it, why we chose it. Because the Open tennis started 50 years ago in 1970, which really is when tennis became professional.
Yes.
So this is the cutoff point for a lot of lists and stuff. It's like who's the greatest player of the Open era. So it's 50 years' time. So a few clues about what it might look like in 50 years' time is really, what was tennis like in 50 years ago? How many changes have there been?
That's a
Like,
great
I've drawn up a
question.
list of the changes that there have been in tennis since
You do?
1970.
That's amazing. Bring
And
it
maybe
on.
it will inform our kind of, when we look into our crystal balls and sift through our tea leaves,
Yes.
what it's going to look like in 50 years' time. Okay, so 50 years ago, 1970, I was a twinkle in the milkman's eye back then. But it was really Australians dominating tennis in 1970. On the female side, Margaret Court. On the male side, Rod Laver, John Newcombe, Ken Rosewall. There was unequal prize money. I think the men earned more than the women. I think it's fair to say that. There wasn't any wheelchair tennis at these Grand Slam events. There wasn't much TV coverage. If a tennis match was on TV, it was like you'd rush home from school to watch it. There was more grass court tennis. The US Open was played on grass courts predominantly. The Australian Open, Wimbledon as ever.
Wow.
There were less backhands. The Wimbledon tournament is still called the single-handed tennis championships. And back in 1970, it really was single-handed. You know, these players played with one-handed backhands.
Yes.
It was later it came in. You know, if you wanted to play indoors at Wimbledon, you'd be looked at as mad. That wouldn't be possible. And perhaps not everything's changed. At Wimbledon, it was all white clothing.
Oh,
They
yes.
were all white. The kind of stripes and patterns came in later, and now it's gone full circle. So there have been massive changes, really, haven't there, since 1970? So if it carries on at the same rate, maybe we'll see some massive changes in 50 years' time. Maybe we'll see some massive changes back to the future. Maybe we'll go back in time, really, and some things will change. Maybe we'll go back to single-handed backhands.
Yes.
But I think it's a nice starting point just to see how different it was 50 years ago.
You just made this episode start in style, because if we're going to talk about tennis in 50 years' time, of course it makes so much sense to go back 50 years and see how it was, because tennis has evolved.
Yeah.
Lots of new rules, lots of new controlling mechanisms for players to flow and the matches to flow as well.
Yeah, tie breaks, they weren't around in 1970, were they?
No?
No? It would be two clear games, I think. I think tie breaks came out at the end of the 70s, and it might have been a tie break at 8 games all instead of 6 games all until maybe 1979, 1980.
So massive changes. And of course, rackets changed
Wooden
immensely.
rackets.
Small wooden rackets,
Yeah.
which I have one upstairs.
Yeah, they look great, don't they?
They are very hard to play with. You can hit the ball, but doing top spin with that thing is a bit weird.
There used to be wooden clamps you put on your racket to keep your racket in shape when you weren't
Yes,
playing
I've
with them.
seen that.
Like vices.
Yes.
You wouldn't want to get your fingers caught in them. Spring-operated vices. Tennis balls, what colour were they?
White.
Yeah.
Yes.
And what did they come in?
At that, I don't know.
They would come in a box.
Card box.
A cardboard box, like an egg box almost.
So they wouldn't create a vacuum like they create now.
Yeah, but there'd be no pop and ring pull.
Yeah, that sweet
you would
sound.
you would open the box and there was some white balls staring at you.
Wow. They did well for changing to yellow, didn't they?
I like those white tennis
You did,
balls.
so you would continue with white?
I would. You can
Isn't
still
it the-
you still buy them. There are still specialist shops.
Don't
you can
tell
still
me.
buy them. Yeah.
Oh, I'm going to buy them just for the
But
fun
I
of
think
it.
they changed because on TV it shows up better. But I think if you're actually playing, I think it's just as good. But we should have a match sometime, David, with wooden tennis rackets and white tennis balls.
Oh, we will.
And
I'm now
vintage
excited.
clothes. And vintage clothes too. Short shorts.
I love that idea, actually. I have shorts like that. I know you do, because I've seen you do it before. And I have a racket. I hope you have one. And I'll order white tennis balls from the past. Okay, so there's a lot of things we can talk about. But I'm just taking one last peek at the past before we start talking about the future. And I'm kind of taking in what you said about the changes of tennis. The courts have stayed always the same, haven't they? They didn't change size.
No,
It's always been like
haven't
that.
changed size. Occasionally, there's been a fad for having no doubles lines, which personally I really like. I think the Masters tournaments, which was the name that the ATP Tour End Finals used to be called at Madison Square Gardens, they would have no doubles lines for a few years in the McEnroe era, which I loved.
I remember that.
And there's a very famous rally, Lendl-McEnroe, where McEnroe kind of hits a shot from out in the tram lines and it kind of goes around the net.
I remember Ivan Agassi and Sampras playing on courts like that with only the singles lines.
They're great, aren't they?
Yeah, they were great.
So let's think, back in the 70s, Australian dominated. So what's changed now is, I suppose there's far more Asian players, far more Eastern European players. The Australians are still there. They've come back a bit.
Yeah.
But it's not so dominated by Australia
Not anymore.
and America. So what about in 50 years' time? What are the nationalities going to be? We say this about all sports. Asia's going to take over. Snooker, for instance, it's kind of so popular in Asia, in China.
Yes.
But they haven't quite broken through and won the World Championships. Same in tennis. They take it so seriously. Some of these players are hothoused. They're kind of playing 10 hours a day. The Chinese swimming program is absolutely brutal.
That's what I'm going to tell you.
Allegedly.
If you want to practice to become an Olympian since you're a kid, it's hardcore what you have to do.
Yeah.
They train you to become the best. So it's not easy.
So surely that's going to pay off, and in 50 years' time,
It might.
Must be.
You do have to have the talent as well, of course. So we're talking about nationalities.
Yeah.
I'll tell you one nationality that I don't believe will be at the top of tennis.
Can I guess? Can you give me a clue?
It's related to me.
Portugal.
Yes. I'm sorry, Portugal, but
Okay,
with João Sousa being our leading man in the 2020s,
well, 50 years ago, would you have predicted that a Swiss player would be the greatest male tennis player of all time? They'd have a lady tennis player who's up there too, in Hingis.
That's a good point. Although Switzerland is a richer country and more developed than Portugal, I think, and more inclined to tennis world and tennis conditions than Portugal is.
But it only takes maybe one player for that explosion to happen, because
Agreed.
after Federer came Wawrinka, quite late in Wawrinka's career.
Yes.
So who knows?
It's open, isn't it? It's difficult to predict.
But on the other hand, Murray hasn't led really to an explosion in kind of British tennis players so far.
Yeah. And so what would you say would be the country that is the country of the future of tennis?
I think it'd be stupid not to bet against Asian tennis players coming through, because it's so
You
popular.
really believe that, eh?
It's so popular amongst viewers in these Asian countries. There's even talk of a 5th Grand Slam taking place there.
That's going to be another question.
Surprisingly, the ATP Tour Finals haven't switched there. I know people like Djokovic. There is a kind of Asian leg to the tennis season. I think, it'd be stupid not to. But then it hasn't happened in other sports as expected. Maybe just because a sport is popular, maybe a country isn't particularly good at playing it. The English love football.
And
we haven't got the results really over.
Yeah, England has probably the best league of football, where players really play and they're real men playing and women, and they don't go and dive and act like victims like the football in Portugal or in the Latino countries.
You'd have to look at the fastest growing countries in the world. Turkey is a very fast growing country. Federer played a tournament in Turkey a few years ago, I think, during the clay court season. That's a vastly expanding country. Turkey, India as well. They've had the odd player over the years, some very skillful doubles players, the Amritraj brothers, and you'd look to those countries as well. Countries like America, they've got so many sports to compete with. Baseball, American football. Football's getting more popular in America, so
over the last few decades.
So maybe it's going to take a foothold in one of these countries, and it would completely change things, really.
What about Africa?
That is on my list. That is the great unexplored thing. And tennis, like all sports, is very keen to expand into new markets.
Yes.
Yes, South Africa's produced some big players. No one
True.
super massive, I don't think. You've had Johan Kriek in tennis, Kevin Anderson as
Yeah.
well, Wayne Ferreira. There's been a few players who've been top 10 players, but there's been no breakaway kind of Grand Slam. I don't think South Africa's had a Grand Slam winner. And of course, a South African champion would be amazing for the sport too.
Yes,
So
it
that's
would.
a great untapped
And
market.
funny enough, you're only referring to South Africa. Africa
There's
is a
North
lot
Africa
bigger than
too.
that.
Morocco's had some very good players, actually.
Mm-hmm.
It has. Agassi was waxing lyrical about one of them. I can't remember his name. Johannes El Alawaini, I think it was. And Agassi at Wimbledon said, this guy has 7 or 8 different serves, which he can disguise very well. Agassi still beat him at Wimbledon, but it was 4 sets.
Yeah.
So there's potential.
It is. The problem with Africa is the conditions for tennis, of course.
Right.
You know, it's very easy to play football, but then when it comes to tennis, you need facilities, you need coaches, you need money to invest. Tennis is almost like a rich man's
It
sport.
might be that the African player who breaks through from going to the Nick Bollettieri Academy in California, or who actually has his tennis training. He's born in Africa, but they have their tennis training elsewhere.
Yes.
And then, unfortunately, it so happens with so many of these players, like the Russian players over the years,
Yes.
Czech players, they defect. They're effectively a citizen of another country. They live there, they train there,
That's a good
they
way to
pay
put
their
it.
taxes there. But that's the way of the world, isn't it?
It is. Or we have one of these corrupted presidents from one of the African countries that has all the money in the world
Who's a
and
tennis fan.
loves tennis and makes his
Yeah.
kid invests on the future
Like
of his
Gaddafi
kid.
was very keen on football for a while, and I
Yes.
think his son was captain of the national side.
There you go.
By massive coincidence. I'm
You
sure he
never
was a
know.
great player.
Yeah. I think in 2070 there's going to be a 5th Grand Slam, and it's going to be in Asia.
In a fixed place in Asia, do you think, or will it rotate?
Fixed place, just
Where
like
would you
all the
like to see
others.
it? Japan, China?
Surely.
Right, yeah.
Would it be India? Maybe not.
Hong Kong?
Hong Kong.
Yeah. Malaysia, Thailand have had some good players over the years.
Yes.
Japan. I love the idea of sharing it around.
Would that be
I've
fair?
always thought that the year-end finals, it's unfair London getting it because London already has Wimbledon, Queen's,
Yeah.
Eastbourne. So I think we're spoiled, and to have it for so many years, I agree with Djokovic. Like, why does London have it? London already has Wimbledon.
Yes.
What more does it need? So I totally agree that it should be shared out. However, I'm a great believer in tradition, and tennis has always had those 4 Grand Slam things. Winning the Grand Slam, which is winning all 4 events
Yes.
in a calendar year, or holding them at the same time. Again, it's if you change that and have a 5th Grand Slam, how can you compare Rod Laver winning the Grand Slam to someone else just failing to win the Grand Slam in the year 2070 because they've got 5 to go for? I'm not a fan of that, but give them the year-end finals, give them the Davis Cup finals, really make an extra effort to take it into new places.
It's interesting because if there was suddenly 5 Grand Slams, wouldn't players have a better chance to break the records of slams from Federer, Nadal, and Djokovic?
That is true, which brings me, if I may, to another point. My prediction is that, and it's a bold prediction because I've got 50 years to go, no one's going to match Federer, Djokovic, Nadal, and Serena Williams. I think we're living through a golden era where it won't be matched. So what happens if no one gets close to their records at all? The motivation's going to go down in terms of, well, you know, I'm never going to match their record. If I'm a great player in 2050, I've won 12 Grand Slams, I might as well retire because, you know, there's nothing to go for. I'm not going to overtake their record. Again, public interest is going to go down because the man on the street's quite interested. Oh, you know, is Djokovic going to overtake Federer to do this? But once that race is run and the golden 4 I've just mentioned all retire, well, really, how is anyone going to overtake that? And I think with every sport, there's a kind of natural assumption that the new generation is better than the last.
Yes.
But with us playing more computer games, I just wonder if 50 years' time, the champion then will actually not be as good as Federer. And if you put him in a virtual computer game, Federer would win because there's so many distractions, as you said. Life is a game of phones now, isn't it?
Yes.
So I wonder, the tennis champion of the future might spend less hours on court to become champion.
Yes.
They say you need 6,000 hours to be
The dedi-
really, really good at something. 6,000 hours practice. With 100 meters, that record is getting better and better. But there's going to come a point where the world record for 100 meters is not going to get any better unless you make the 100 meters running track go slightly downhill. It can't get better every year. It's going to go down some stages. So maybe that's going to be the twist.
Yeah,
In
well,
2070, they're not going to be as good as they were in 2020.
it makes sense looking at how the new generations are coming along and how the world is evolving and changing. And
Do you think it's partly that at the moment that Federer, Djokovic and Nadal are better because the new players coming through are spending less time on the court as youngsters?
yeah, it could be. It definitely could be. They can even spend lots of hours there, but yeah, that attention span can be different. But I'm a believer in what can happen in the future and the evolution of man. Not that it means it's a positive or a negative, but in terms of athletes, I think that human beings are definitely becoming faster, stronger, taller, and it might be that there's going to be a player or two or three or more. Maybe we will still see the ultimate tennis player come into the world and do something that we have never seen before.
Bit like that film Lucy.
Oh, I like that
the
movie.
scene
That
where
is a
she
good
can-
movie.
She can look at you and know what disease you're going to catch in 20 years' time. She has these superpowers.
Yes, maybe with the evolution of science, technology, health,
Nutrition. The whole,
Nutrition.
yes.
and the evolution of mindset. Hopefully, sooner or later, there will come something we've never
Maybe these
seen
players
before.
coming through will need less hours on the court to be as good because the training will be cleverer, the nutrition will be cleverer,
Yes.
and they'll still be able to be on their Xbox for 9 hours per night.
Yes.
But they'll need less hours on the tennis court to be as good. And here's another question: does tennis need players to carry on getting better and better? If the champion of 2070 isn't as good as Federer, might that not make for more exciting tennis? You're watching someone on TV who is more like the public courts player, makes mistakes, but their close matches are exciting. You can go, that match I'm watching on TV is like the match I played with Billy Boggins down Preston Park last Tuesday. And is that not a good thing?
Well, there's always going to be this human instinct of wanting to break records and getting better. So I'm sure the mentality of trying to be better is always going to be there.
Yeah.
Now, is it still going to happen? I don't know. I choose to believe that it's going to get better and some players will be better. And I'll tell you what I keep dreaming of from time to time, even in my dreams when I'm sleeping. Sometimes I dream of a tennis player that will come. It's going to be so gifted and so advanced, mind and body, that might even dominate everybody and just dominate the tennis world to an extent where nobody will be a rival.
Can you give any examples, like in sport? Have there been any people who've come out like that? You think
Muhammad Ali,
Michael Jordan?
Michael Jordan,
Yeah.
even Magic Johnson,
Yeah.
Tiger Woods.
But even they've had their struggles because they're amazing and they're brilliant for a while and dominating. But then people go, well, he's really good. I've got to up my game. And,
True. And that's hopefully that happens.
But how would this player be produced? I wonder if
Good parents.
this is a frightening, parents.
Parents.
This is a frightening scenario, but will tennis players perhaps be bred in future? Will you go, well, Federer's great, but he needs a great backhand. So what we'll do is mix the genes of Wawrinka with the genes of Federer.
Yes.
And we'll create a Federer player with a Wawrinka backhand.
Yes. We might get to a point where we're so robotized, is that a word?
Yeah. Engineered.
Engineered, thank you.
Isn't that frightening?
It is frightening, but imagine, because there might be a day that we look at sports, and this is happening in many countries, China included, where people and players are designed. Their whole life is designed for an objective.
Well, in horse racing, they breed horses to
They
race.
breed horses.
They go, this horse was a great champion.
Yes.
Let's put that horse out to stud
Yeah.
with that mare who was a, great lineage too.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Genetic engineering. Maybe one day, like that movie Gattaca, wasn't it? Where parents come to a center and they want to have a kid, and they will choose the traits that they choose for the personality and the physics of their player. You don't know.
Yeah.
Now we're going a bit further than 50 years.
That is frightening. You're frightening me, and you're putting my skin has kind of chilblains on it now, because it's nice not to know what you're getting with children.
Agreed.
Really, isn't it? It's like someone comes out and you go,
I'm with
yeah,
you.
they look a bit like me, but they're
Yes.
different as well. And
I
they've
like
got their
that.
own. We've got Graf and Agassi coming together, and everyone goes, "God, their kid's going to be a great tennis player."
Yes.
Imagine if you're that kid, the pressure on you. Some of McEnroe's kids can't play tennis at all.
Yeah.
And that must be awful for them, because people must go every time they step on a court, God, you're not as good as your dad. Then there's Bob the postman down the road who's not interested in tennis at all.
And it's very good.
And just eats chips for breakfast.
Yeah.
And yet his son is brilliant at tennis, and isn't that lovely?
It is.
That suddenly
I
these
like that
players
a lot.
come from nowhere. But depressingly, a lot of these great tennis players have a tennis background, their family's into it.
Yeah. So we're putting it out there in this conversation, the possibilities of the future. We're becoming more and more controlled. Society has more and more rules. Tennis has more rules. We're blocking a lot of our human behavior. The way that the world is evolving with the control of society, especially the advanced ones. I come from Africa, man, and I'm here living in an advanced country as England, and the differences are massive in terms of control. Yes, we get better quality of life, but then again, we lose the freedom to...
Spirituality,
Yeah, spirituality. I like that word.
Are we more advanced? It
Well
depends what your
said.
definition is.
So, can you imagine how tennis will be? Bit by bit, changes will keep coming and infecting tennis, and maybe even making it more limited than it was before.
Yeah, well, all the articles I've read about the future of tennis while researching this episode have said, proposed more rules.
More rules.
Yeah, by and large, more rules. Maybe things with carrying on playing when there's a let cord, that's less rules.
For example.
But that's the exception. But they've all mentioned that, players are inhibited, they can't smash their racket up. And I've read several articles where it goes, that should be encouraged. A tennis court should be a place where you can let loose your emotions and entertain by being violent. And it's fascinating. We discussed this before. I think, you disagree with me, but I do think that, these tennis players are role models. And if they're smashing up their 150-pound racket, I think that's a bad example to the kid at home whose parents have saved up for that racket with a month's wages. So I'm not in favour of that. I don't miss the days of McEnroe.
Yeah, of course.
Serena Williams arguing with the umpire, Kyrgios, Jeff Tarango. Yeah, it's going to happen, but I wouldn't want to actively encourage that by saying, look, come on, let the steam off your chest. We're not going to bleep out that swear word. Yeah. So that's my view on it.
So you
everyone's
think...
got their own views.
So you think tennis will be very similar in 50 years from now? Don't you see new rules coming up that is going to kind of maybe limit the way that players are going to play their tennis? Personalities are going to become more and more enclosed in this box where people have to all behave like, let's say, Federer, the true gentleman, the educated person, the good person for everyone. And this might limit the way that the tennis is expressed. First of all, tennis is a competition. It should just be seen as a competition. Aren't we boxing people to behave all the same, becoming a bit more robotic? And then where is the nature and the variety of the different games? Won't that make tennis more and more uniform?
I think it's fine at the moment. You sent me a YouTube clip the other day of, I think it was the 10 strangest ends to tennis matches. And one of the clips was a player just disagreeing with, I can't remember what the decision was, but he just said, right, it was the middle of the match, just packed his bags and walked off court. And that's his decision. And I think umpires are quite soft generally with players, which is fair enough. They will give them a few warnings. They won't just say point deducted or set to Evans. They will, and I think that's right. So I think players still have a fair bit of freedom. I don't think all the time putting them in a box is a bad thing, because if you gave them total freedom, I mean, Nadal and Djokovic, a number of times they bounced the ball. That was stupid. And you could say limiting that is really putting them in a box. So they're like Federer or yourself, who are exemplary in terms of you move between points very quickly, which is what people want to see and what most opponents want too. They don't want their opponent to bounce the ball 20 times while waiting for a serve.
Yes.
So I think that putting in a box is
not a
bad thing. But yeah, if they really crack down and the first time you spat on the court, they said, right, game to your opponent, that's out of order.
Too much.
That's too much. Give them a chance, they're human. But I think it has been in the past too much. Mr. McEnroe, yes, I'll call the court referee for you.
Yes.
No, don't bother. You know, you've had enough warnings. I think it's okay at the moment, but in the past they've been too soft. And I don't want it to swing the other way.
Yes. Until, and here comes another question for you, is until the umpires are replaced by robots.
Well, it's gone that way a bit with Hawkeye,
Yes.
and I think Hawkeye is a positive thing. I don't know if I'd entirely trust it 100%. I'm like this with DNA too. Getting off on a tangent. If I was convicted of a murder on DNA, I don't totally trust it.
Yes.
You know, that when they say there's a 1 in 10 billion chance that James Christie didn't commit this murder. Well, how do I know that?
Yes.
That's something you've said.
Exactly.
I can't disprove or prove that at all. I don't want to encourage players like McEnroe to play up because although it's great entertainment, it's not really the spirit of tennis.
So you think that tennis will always have human referees? There might come a time that we're so evolved in our society that robots will definitely be as perfect as you can get, and the philosophical idea behind it, which is one day robots will be more fair than human beings because they will not make mistakes, and whatever shot the player hit on the ground of a tennis court will be perfectly evaluated by a computer.
It's a boring answer, but I like the way it is now. You've got the technology, but the players have to challenge to get access to the technology. So things can go wrong and they've used up all their challenges.
Yeah.
But I do like the human element of it where it's there. I wouldn't want everything to be called by Hawkeye.
Yes. Look, I like your answer being an emotional one. You're giving an opinion based on what you like. But I'm trying to go the direction of not what we like, but what is happening to society with evolution. Look at China, social credit, controlling human beings.
Social credit, yeah.
For
very
example,
interesting,
this might be the future of lots of countries. We don't know. And how is tennis going to be affected by these kind of rules? I think with technology...
Could social credit come into tennis?
Yes, could it? In a way where... I'm not saying that the social credit system is imposed into tennis, but a society under control at that extent will be influenced in all the other areas, sports included. So I'm thinking ahead in terms of what is going to happen with the world's future and how it's going to influence tennis. But anyway...
These are massive questions. I mean, when you're talking about social credit, which is a fascinating subject where citizens in places like China, they build up a social credit, you know, by doing good deeds or not doing bad deeds.
Yes.
Say, what, for instance, if tennis did give more major tournaments to China, well, maybe that would influence it and maybe they get more people on the tennis board. And
that makes sense.
Well, social credit's been great for it. Why don't we bring this into tennis? So you get more challenges in a match if you built up credit throughout the tournaments.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, but that's open to debate. I mean, did that person deserve to build up that social credit?
It's crazy to think about it.
Discretion and open to abuse.
Yeah.
Things like that. Yeah. Absolutely fascinating. Yeah. Terrifying.
Terrifying, it's true. Yes. If we stick to the 50 years, I think that kind of changes are a little bit more, if they happen, more into the future. Suggestion? I have a few more. Go.
Well, we're looking about whether the player of 2070 will be better or not.
Yes.
And you mentioned technology. The racket technology is one of the obvious things about that. And there's this argument that the bigger the racket, the less skillful the player. But I've got a big-headed racket. I don't consider myself unskillful. I always object to that. So that's one thing which has been advocated to make tennis better by, you know, in the coming years, limit the size of the racket head. I'm a fierce opponent of that. Yeah, racket technology, your thoughts, David?
Yeah, I agree. If you talk about the technology with rackets, tennis might have a better player one day because of better conditions when it comes to equipment and even balls.
Is that good though? Because the better the racket technology, the easier it is to play the game. Is it not nice to conquer the game, and it's been quite hard work getting there? Is it bad that if racket technology would get so good, you could step on a court, having never played before, and play
Auto shot.
well enough to have beaten Borg in the 1980
Yes.
final? Is that a good thing? Yes and no, maybe.
I wouldn't like it.
No.
I think we have to leave tennis to the skill of the player. Definitely. I'm glad that the rackets have changed, because this counts as a little bit what I'm agreeing with you, because I grab that wooden racket that I have, and I tried it before, and I now grab these bigger ones and with more technology, better material.
Yeah.
And my God, I have so much more fun playing tennis, and I'm still doing my shots. So as long as there's a limit
You
to
really
what...
think it makes a difference?
Between those wooden ones from the 50s or the 40s and these ones, definitely.
Yeah.
So I wouldn't like to go back to the
Well,
old
it's a
ones.
different sport, isn't
Even
it?
McEnroe and all these players, they compliment. They love to play with the tennis rackets of these days more than before.
Yeah.
So as long as there's a limit to what automatic can
I
we
think
give.
the key thing is when the racket starts guiding the ball like it's a nuclear
That's when
missile
it
and can
stops.
change the path of the ball.
That's when it
But
stops.
until then, surely skill, strength, angle, timing is still going to come into it. Hopefully, God willing. Let's switch the balls though. This is one of my gripes about balls. And one of the reasons I think tennis is a really expensive sport. They're expensive, tennis balls, I think.
They are.
You can buy them in bulk, but if you don't, you go to a shop like Sports Direct where they're probably paying their staff very little, but still £6 for 4 tennis balls. They're going to last you 2 matches,
They
aren't
will.
they? And they're going to start wearing out halfway through the second match.
Yeah.
Can they not build a ball which will last for 6 months or so and still be good and still behave roughly the same way as when you got it out of the tin? Well, if they could, and then maybe they can, it's going to mean less profit for them.
Yes.
But that would be a great breakthrough.
That would be great. Like a ball that sticks to all the material that is in it. Yes, it's very difficult to imagine how a ball can become like that, but if it does, I'll support it. So in 50 years' time, we will finally have, because of the new generations that are coming, the lack of attention span, we will have maybe Grand Slams that are best of threes.
Generalization, but I think people like you and me, if I can speak on your behalf, are pro best of 5 sets for the men and 3 sets for the women. So until we die out, I think there's going to be a big fight to change it. And I'm sure the players are the same too. I'm sure people like Federer, who's going to be a big political voice when he retires, if he ever does.
Yes.
Djokovic and Murray, they know the value of 5 sets and the glory of coming down from 2 sets down and bang for your buck, really. Grand Slam tournaments can be very, very short if it's best of 3 sets. I think a lot of the people who are calling for best of 3 sets, apart from Billie Jean King, are people who aren't tennis fans and aren't going to be tennis fans, even if it does change. So I hope it stays. Maybe, a compromise could be reached in the next gen finals, which is a peak of the future. I think there's no advantage there. I think it's sudden death juice, which is something I've enjoyed playing down the public courts in the past. Every game has the chance of this sudden death climax.
Yes.
So I quite like that. If you're gonna have a compromise, I would quite like to have sudden death juice, but still best of 5 sets.
Okay, exactly. And what about the style of tennis in 50 years? Do you think it will still have volleys?
This is linked, I think, to maybe how doubles fares in the future, because doubles, compared to 50 years ago, has been marginalised. I'm so out of touch with doubles because I'm not a fan, but I think, are the Grand Slam tournaments, is it still best of 5 sets for the men's doubles?
Best of 5 for gentlemen's doubles.
So it's still best of 5 there.
And all the rest are best of 3.
I would swear, I haven't researched, but I swear the prize money might have gone down a bit more. You might get a bit less TV coverage. So with less doubles and less top players playing doubles, because 50 years ago, you would get your Rod Lavers playing doubles. I think maybe the volley will die out a lot more unless they change the
Wow.
balls,
So
the speed of the courts, and you might get more Agassi volleys kind of volleying from inside the baseline.
Yes.
It's a shame. It's nice to have a volley. It's nice to have a lob, which you don't get unless someone moves in for a volley.
Mm-hmm.
Surely you must still get drop shots if people are playing deep from behind the baseline. So I think there still will be volleys, but I think people will volley less through choice and more through they've been brought to the net by a drop shot after a long, deep baseline volley, which is the pattern, the way it's been going for years and years. And yourself, what do you think?
Well, the last 2 years, I started implementing volleys into my game. And I must say, volleys would just disappear from the world of tennis if people had forgotten how good it feels to kill a ball at the net. Because when you're playing a singles match and you hit the great approach shot and you know you have the advantage, you come to the net and you kill it off, and especially the drop shot volleys, only if people forget the value of it, it will disappear.
Have you enjoyed volleys more and brought it more into your game because you're playing more doubles over the past?
Definitely because of watching tennis. Doubles
and
helped. Federer. Because I just want my game to have everything. It just feels right. And ever since I started slicing more, drop shotting more, serving volleying, coming to the net, even the saber, all those trick shots make tennis so much fun.
Do you try not to play the same shot twice in a row within the rally?
It's all down to feeling.
And what about volleying? Do you have a system for that? Because I used to have a very simple system I devised myself.
Okay.
If the ball came to me and it landed nearer the service line than the baseline, I would try to move into the net unless I was out way on the wings or somewhere like that.
Yes.
So that was my rule for coming in. But I've stopped doing it, for quite a long time. But I used to do that, and it worked pretty well, actually.
It's an instinct decision that just happens in the moment.
And when you come to the net, do you sometimes find yourself tiptoeing to the net to not alert your opponent?
Oh, wow. I never thought of that. I like that a lot.
And if you move to the net when your opponent's playing the shot, they can't see you move to the net. Whereas if you move before they play the shot, they can see you.
Yes.
But if they got their eye on the ball there and you move then...
I love that. Every once in a while, there's a moment that you come to the net that you totally surprise your opponent.
Well, I've got some very crazy left field things which might provoke some discussion.
Go.
We're kind of in the territory here of H.G. Wells' Brave New World, kind of, if you've ever read that, his crazy ideas about the future. Okay. Which kind of, some of them kind of came to pass, I suppose, the internet and things like that. Mm-hmm. One of my ideas that might maybe come around is virtual tennis, where you can actually program a player like Federer into a computer program and practice playing against them. Well, you'd have a tennis machine you take down, which would be a hologram, say, of a player you program like Federer, and you could actually play against them, and it would program in their shots and the probability of how they'd respond to your shots. So you could have a virtual game of tennis down there. Now, this would be very expensive software, and I don't know how it'd be produced, but wouldn't it be useful for, say, like Djokovic before a Wimbledon final, instead of having a knock-up against Marin Cilic to prepare for the Federer final, or someone right-handed who serves and volleys, they could actually program in a hologram, or in Federer's case, mimics the height of the Federer ball toss and the angle of his serves. For the top players, wouldn't it be useful they could program and practice against their opponent virtually before facing them in a big match?
I'm sure that technology will come one day, and it's software and hardware together, and I support it and I love it, and if the price is accessible, I would definitely go for it.
Well, I've always wanted to buy a ball machine, but this would be a step up.
Yeah, I mean, we're now going almost to the point of mentioning androids of the future. I think there will be the technology, and maybe they will come with androids and robots that will be able to represent. But that's very far into the future for sure.
It is. So let me give you a more earthy, realistic app, which maybe exists, which is more applicable for Joe Public, really. It's not my rule change of the week, but it's my invention of the week. Yeah. An app which tells you how full up the public courts are before you go to it. Because this has been my problem during lockdown. You go along and you don't know whether you're going to get a court down the public courts. It takes me 20 minutes to walk to my local public courts. But if there was an app which told you before you set off how many courts are free and what courts are free, would you get that app? This is my invention of the week for the future to help normal players.
I like that invention, but it already happens a little bit with the booking system. For example, at Within or at Hove Park, you always know what is booked and what is not. But your app would be a little bit more advanced because it would sense if those players that booked that court are actually there playing. So I salute that idea.
It'd be a step on. So accepted.
Yes, accepted. And I like that a lot because then you could think, am I going to those courts or am I going to other courts? And it would save us some trips. So I like that.
Because I think you get apps which tells you how full a pub is, really. And I don't know how they work. Maybe it depends on the barman in the pub, kind of.
You see, you're coming up with these ideas that relate to what I was talking about, the evolution of man and what's going to happen and how society is becoming more robotic in some sense, because we will have more and more ways to know exactly what's going on and how to evolve and what to do and what to not do. And I think these things are all going to come sooner or later. So I'm glad we're living in this generation because I'm not sure I'm going to like the future. We'll see how it goes. Maybe it will be great. Maybe it won't. Maybe we'll have to run away to Africa to have some old-fashioned values and enjoy life as it's supposed to be.
That is very true. But, don't be too pessimistic about the future because you can shape the future. You're a punter there.
Yeah.
As you are already, you're trying to take a big say over the public courts.
Yes.
And, the way that they are run.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have a say over that. And who's to say it won't get better and things, instead of becoming more robotic, we go back to 1970
Maybe
where it was all white. There was no Hawkeye. And you could have the umpire would fall asleep on their chair and the players could prod him and have a laugh with the crowd.
Yes.
Things come full circle sometimes.
Maybe they do. Fashion definitely does, and some other things.
I think that's a good thing. One day I will be in fashion. It's going to come back in.
Will tennis rules be directed to shortening tennis time? And I'm not talking about 3 sets now. I'm just talking about the rules. Time, wasting, etc. Do you think tennis will be shorter or longer?
Well,
each match.
I think
shorter.
I think they'll have to concentrate not on shorter necessarily, but having more TV coverage, which is where it's moving.
Yes.
More TV coverage with a greater percentage of the ball being in play.
Yeah.
A lesser percentage of... We videoed our matches and I love watching them back.
Great.
Even when I lose heavily as I normally do.
We always learn some...
What strikes me about watching them is the amount of time we're picking up the balls. I'm picking my nose. I'm hitting the first serve into the net. How little of the time the ball is actually in play.
It's so little.
And I know we're not professionals and I can't keep up with the long rallies with you. But I think that's something tennis has, even at the top level. If I video a match, I speed up the changeovers. I often speed up to the end of the game. And I think a lot of people do this. So maybe it doesn't need to be shortened because if they just make it easier to fast forward things, and maybe I find it quite hard sometimes on Amazon Prime and a lot of the TV things to actually time it to get it to the end of the set because you're often doing it blindly, really.
You have to do it in the computer. What you said is so true. I watch matches that are full length, 3 hours. I'm not going to lie to you, 40 minutes. That's the time on court.
Yeah.
Sometimes. It's like less than half.
Let me ask, instead of you fast forwarding, would you like to see a highlights package where it just cuts out the first serves, the changeovers, or would that be too artificial for you?
I like both options.
Yeah.
So choose one or choose another.
And sometimes for the big matches especially, it's great to watch it live and you see Federer swat a fly off his nose and the commentators make some very insightful comments. But I think getting back to your original question, the commercial people who pay for the adverts and the TV stations, they'll still want a Federer match to last 3 hours so they can get all their commercials in. And they're not going to devise a system where Federer matches are just 3 hours and the little matches, which people aren't going to watch, are going to be 1 hour. So I think that's a great thing that's going to still keep it there.
It's true, although Amazon Prime has no adverts.
Yeah.
So there you go there.
Is that right? What's the one I watch where they have adverts for Tennis Warehouse?
Yes, Tennis TV doesn't have adverts. I'll say one more thing about that. I definitely support the idea of stopping the sit-downs. I know it's not the same level, but we can play forever. We can play and see who stands at the end strong with their energy without having to stop. Or maybe less stops. Maybe say 2 pauses
Why
per
do you
set.
think they have those stops? Partly.
Yeah, it's because of the adverts. I
Because of the
understand that.
adverts,
Yeah.
so,
So if the adverts are removed, then if a service is given without adverts, then it's possible. Football stops 10 minutes or 15 in 2 halves. So many sports are
Well,
like that.
maybe it'll be, you pay extra to have a service without the adverts on
exactly.
some channels. I suppose it depends where they're playing. If they're playing in the Australian Open, it's the blazing heat, which looks like it's going to continue. Yeah, maybe they need a changeover. Some arguments happen at the changeover, which is quite entertaining.
Yes.
But a lot of the time they're flouting the rules of the changeover. Like, you're not supposed to have a proper changeover till 3 games in the set.
Yes.
But they're all toweling down.
Oh my God.
And they towel down between points. So,
yes.
Rather than flog a dead horse, but I've always said remove the towels. Don't give them the towels options.
I understand that.
They've got the sweatbands there.
Yeah.
The towels is just like a nervous Tourette's
It
tick,
is.
which wastes time. It almost makes the ball boys look like slave and the ball girls.
Yes.
They have to fetch the towel.
Agreed.
Lovely, these lockdown tournaments where, I don't want to put the ball boys out of business. You've got to do your own towel.
Yes, exactly. I like that.
Tommy Verdasco.
Oh my God. That will be there forever.
But will there be towels in 2070? Who knows?
Yes, exactly.
Hopefully we'll live that long to find out.
I hope so. And to finish it off, from the 3 masters, Djokovic, Nadal and Federer, which kid will be a Grand Slam champion first?
Which of their kids?
You got to choose one.
So this is out of Federer, Djokovic.
And Nadal.
Nadal hasn't had a kid yet.
Oh, no. But if he has, of course.
If he has, yeah, that's
Who's going to be the best?
Can we substitute? I know this is going to kill you.
Go for it.
Can we substitute Murray for Nadal?
No,
he has
you
got
can.
some kids.
Murray does not deserve to be here because the difference in Grand Slam is so massive that I'll give you this. Let's rephrase the question from Djokovic, Nadal, Federer, and because we're in the UK, Murray, which son will be the best tennis player or daughter?
I think Djokovic, he's had a fairly stable team around him. And I cannot imagine that his kids will not be kind of mucking in with one of the coaches who are kind of stooges playing second fiddle to whichever celebrity coach Djokovic is employing at the time.
Yes.
So I would say Djokovic, but the law of averages means Federer has so many children. So many, how many?
4.
15, 16 now? I don't know. That's just the ones we know about. Edit that out, please. No, he's got 2 sets of twins, hasn't he?
No, I like your answer more.
The
15.
law of averages means one of those at least
Yeah, exactly.
is going to be a champion. But yeah, the pressure on those kids. My advice to them, change your name by deed poll as soon as possible.
Yes.
Don't be photographed with Roger Federer at any restaurant.
Exactly.
And just try and plough your own way. Maybe become a social worker. Just do not be in his shadow. Quickly before you sign off, which kid is gonna, or can we throw Serena in too?
That's even better. With Serena too, isn't it?
Yeah.
She deserves it. My God. Thinking about the father
little
of Serena.
What's her name? Pluto or? I can't remember her name.
It has some star name. It's true.
Yeah.
You know what? I'll go with Serena. Do you know why?
I think you're right.
And you did so well for adding that one.
Granddad will help out, won't he?
Exactly what I was going to say. Looking at the father, I think that's going to be the next champion.
But life's a great level. Not all the Williams sisters were great tennis players, were they?
True.
So
wait a second.
We
How
all have
many were
different
they?
talents.
How many were they?
I think there were 4.
Okay, I didn't know that. That's a new one for me.
Yeah.
All right then. So, Jim,
Good
thanks
answer. I like that.
That was because of you. Thank you. And what about Murray then? What happened to Murray?
Well, he's got 2
Murray's
daughters.
kids,
He's got
yes.
2 daughters, hasn't he?
Future
Really.
champions?
If they move to Marbella, I think. But they live in England.
Yes,
So
they do.
they're in the wrong country. They need to relocate.
They have to go to those
when quarantine's
academies.
lifted, when lockdown's lifted, they should catch a flight and train somewhere sunny.
Yeah, exactly. Thanks for coming, Jim.
Thank you.
And we'll see each other again for this talk in a month's time.